Generation Alpha, born from around 2010 onward, is the first generation to be fully immersed in a digital world from birth. Unlike previous generations who witnessed a rise of technology, Gen Alpha is growing up with it seamlessly integrated into every aspect of their lives. Smartphones, tablets, smart TVs, virtual assistants, and AI-powered apps are not innovations to them. They are simply the norm. These children are swiping screens before they can even speak in full sentences. Digital fluency is becoming second nature, with toddlers navigating YouTube Kids, interacting with AI toys, and even using voice commands to control their environment. This level of exposure has never been seen before and is reshaping childhood in ways we are only beginning to understand. The advantage of this digital upbringing is massive access to knowledge and learning tools. Generation Alpha can explore the world with a few taps, watch educational content tailored to their interests, and interact with gamified learning platforms that adapt to their pace. They are acquiring skills much earlier than previous generations. Many start coding, creating digital content, or learning languages well before reaching their teens. Their ability to process information quickly and multitask across various platforms is giving them a competitive edge in a world that increasingly values digital literacy and adaptability. In this sense, they are arguably the most empowered generation to date. However, this digital power comes at a cost. Continuous exposure to screens and the internet from infancy is raising serious concerns about developmental impacts. Studies suggest that early and frequent screen time may hinder attention spans, reduce face-to-face social skills, and delay emotional development. Generation Alpha is also being raised in an environment of instant gratification, where everything is available on demand. This can make it difficult for them to develop patience, focus, and resilience qualities that are essential for long-term success and mental well-being. The digital world, while rich in information, also bombards them with overstimulation, notifications, and distractions that can prevent deep thinking and meaningful engagement with the world around them. Moreover, growing up in a digital-first world means that Gen Alpha is being shaped by algorithms from the outset. What they watch, what they play, and what they think is cool is much of it being guided by data-driven platforms that learn their preferences and feed them curated content. This level of algorithmic influence raises ethical concerns. It blurs the line between choice and manipulation, potentially narrowing their worldview and reinforcing cognitive bubbles. Even at a young age, they are becoming targets of digital marketing, influencers, and product placements that subtly shape their identity and desires. This early digital immersion creates a paradox. They are growing up with immense power to access and create content, but also with increased vulnerability to corporate and psychological influence. In essence, Generation Alpha is navigating uncharted territory. They are the pioneers of hyperdigital reality where opportunity and risk go hand in hand. Their relationship with technology is setting the stage for future generations, making it crucial to understand both the empowerment and the fragility that come with being the first truly digital natives. Generation Alpha is the most connected generation in human history, with access to an endless array of social platforms, messaging apps, gaming networks, and virtual communities from an incredibly young age. They are born into a world where communication is instant, constant, and global. Through smartphones, tablets, and wearable devices, they can interact with friends, family, and even strangers across the world with just a tap or a swipe. They don't know a world without Wi-Fi, FaceTime, or emojis. In many ways, this hyper-connected reality gives them a sense of belonging to a larger, more diverse global community. They are exposed to cultures, languages, and perspectives that previous generations had to travel or study extensively to understand. Their social awareness and digital communication skills are evolving rapidly as a result of these constant interactions. Yet, despite this unprecedented digital connectivity, Generation Alpha faces a deepening crisis of real-world social disconnection. As more of their interactions happen through screens, they risk missing out on the subtle nuances of face-to-face communication, body language, eye contact, tone of voice, and emotional cues. These are essential components of empathy and emotional intelligence, and without enough real-world experience, many children may struggle to develop them fully. While chatting in online games or commenting on videos gives the illusion of interaction, it's often shallow, lacking the depth and authenticity of true human connection. Over time, this can lead to feelings of isolation, loneliness, and even identity confusion, especially during key developmental years when children form their sense of self through real-life social experiences. Compounding issue is the rise of performative behavior driven by social media. Even at a young age, children are learning to curate their image for digital platforms. Whether it's TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, many are already thinking in terms of likes, shares, and followers. This introduces pressure to perform, to be liked, to look perfect, and to seek validation from an online audience rather than developing authentic confidence. The constant comparison with peers or influencers, often enhanced by filters and editing tools, can distort their self-image and create unrealistic expectations. For a developing mind, this kind of psychological environment can be overwhelming and damaging, leading to anxiety, depression, and social withdrawal. Parents and educators are increasingly concerned about the amount of time Gen Alpha spends in front of screens versus interacting in physical spaces. Many children prefer digital play over outdoor games or face-to-face hangouts, which affects their physical health, creativity, and emotional regulation. The convenience of digital interaction can lead to avoidance of more challenging, real-world social situations that are necessary for building resilience and coping skills. While digital tools offer convenience and entertainment, they cannot fully replicate the depth of human connection that comes from being physically present with others. As a result, Generation Alpha stands at a complex crossroads. They are more socially networked than any group before them, yet they risk being the most socially disconnected in terms of genuine human relationships. Their emotional development is being shaped in an environment where connection is easy, but authentic interaction is becoming increasingly rare. Generation Alpha is growing up in an era defined by constant global disruption and uncertainty. From their earliest years, they have been witnesses to and participants in events that have fundamentally reshaped the world. One of the most defining moments of their formative years was the COVID-19 pandemic. For many of them, their first memories include lockdowns, face masks, remote learning, and social distancing. Unlike previous generations who experienced a more predictable and stable early childhood, Gen Alpha has learned that the world can change overnight. This early exposure to crisis has deeply influenced their worldview, shaping them into a generation that is more cautious, more aware, and more sensitive to global issues than their predecessors at the same age. The pandemic didn't just disrupt their routines. It rewired their sense of normal. Traditional schooling was replaced with online classes. Birthday parties turned into Zoom calls. Playdates were canceled. As a result, many children in this generation experience prolonged isolation during key developmental stages. These disruptions have had real psychological effects, including increased levels of anxiety, attention issues, and social withdrawal. The emotional toll of these early experiences may not be fully understood yet, but signs already point to a generation that is emotionally more fragile, more introspective, and more sensitive to instability than those before them. But it's not just the pandemic that has left its mark. Generation Alpha is also coming of age amid an escalating climate crisis. They are growing up with constant exposure to alarming news about wildfires, floods, melting glaciers, and endangered ecosystems. Climate anxiety is already a documented phenomenon in children and teens, with many expressing fear and sadness about the planet's future. They are absorbing the message that their world is at risk and that their generation will need to step up in ways no other has had to. This sense of responsibility is creating a paradoxical pressure. They are being told they're the hope for tomorrow while still trying to understand the world they've just entered. Geopolitical unrest, economic uncertainty, and the rise of AI and automation are further contributing to an environment of unpredictability. From witnessing wars on live news to overhearing adult conversations about job insecurity or political instability, Generation Alpha is growing up more exposed to adult concerns than any previous group of children. Their digital access makes it nearly impossible to shield them entirely from disturbing or complex realities. What used to be abstract ideas, recession, war, pollution, inequality, are now part of their everyday awareness, whether through social media, news apps, or even classroom discussions. Despite all this, Generation Alpha is also showing signs of resilience. Being shaped by crisis has, in some ways, made them more adaptable. They are learning how to cope with change, navigate uncertainty, and find creative solutions to new problems. Their ability to move between online and offline worlds gives them tools for flexibility that earlier generations had to develop much later. However, this resilience exists alongside heightened fragility. Their mental and emotional foundations are being laid during an era of upheaval, meaning the support systems around them, parents, schools, and communities need to be stronger, more aware, and better equipped to help them thrive amid constant change. Education for Generation Alpha is undergoing a radical transformation, driven by technology and innovation at a scale never before seen in human history. Traditional classroom models are being rapidly replaced or enhanced by digital platforms, artificial intelligence, personalized learning apps, and virtual or augmented reality experiences. Gen Alpha isn't just using technology in school. They're learning through it, around it, and even because of it. Their earliest educational encounters often happen on a screen, whether the YouTube learning video, an interactive reading app, or a gamified math platform that rewards progress with virtual badges and levels. This digital-first approach is fundamentally altering how they absorb information, how they think, and how they perceive the value of learning itself. One of the most significant advantages of this tech-driven education is personalization. Unlike one-size-fits-all models of the past, Generation Alpha is being offered learning experiences tailored to their pace, interests, and abilities. AI algorithms can adapt the difficulty of tasks in real time, identify learning gaps, and suggest exercises to strengthen weak areas. Children who once might have been left behind in a crowded classroom now have tools that meet them exactly where they are. This individualized attention allows for faster mastery, greater engagement, and a sense of autonomy in their educational journey. Learning becomes less about memorizing facts and more about interactive discovery, problem solving, and digital exploration. However, this revolution comes with serious concerns. As students become increasingly reliant on screens and algorithms, questions arise about the development of deep critical thinking, attention span, and long-term comprehension. Constant interaction with bite-sized, fast-moving content may train young brains to crave stimulation and avoid sustained effort. Complex subjects that require deep focus and reflection can become less appealing compared to the instant feedback loops offered by gamified apps. This shift in learning habits may result in a generation that excels at navigating information quickly, but struggles with deep analysis, patience, and independent thought. Furthermore, the presence of AI and automation in the educational space raises questions about the human element in learning. Teachers, once the central figures in a child's intellectual and moral development, are now sharing space with data-driven systems. While tech can certainly enhance education, it cannot replace the empathy, mentorship, and social bonding that only a human educator can provide. For many children, especially in their formative years, emotional connection with a teacher plays a critical role in building confidence, curiosity, and a love of learning. Reducing that interaction risks making education feel transactional rather than transformational. Another challenge is digital inequality. While many Generation Alpha children have access to cutting-edge tools and fast internet, a significant number around the world do not. This deepens existing educational divides, reinforcing socioeconomic gaps rather than closing them. Technology, for all its power, is not a guaranteed equalizer. It can amplify privilege just as easily as it can democratize knowledge. As Gen Alpha continues to learn in this evolving landscape, the responsibility falls on educators, parents, and policymakers to ensure that technology enhances rather than undermines the essence of education. They must find a balance between innovation and tradition, between personalization and human connection, and between speed and substance. Generation Alpha is growing up in a world where algorithms are not just tools. They are invisible architects of their daily experiences, shaping what they see, what they believe, and even how they feel. From an early age, their exposure to content is filtered and curated by sophisticated recommendation engines embedded in platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and various gaming and educational apps. These algorithms are constantly analyzing their behavior, interests, clicks, and watch time to deliver personalized content that keeps them engaged for as long as possible. For a generation still developing cognitive and emotional awareness, this constant tailoring of information creates a digital environment that is both seductive and subtly manipulative. Unlike older generations who had to seek out content intentionally, Generation Alpha is being spoon-fed information by machines that learn their preferences faster than they do. A child watching a cartoon or playing a game online might start with one interest, but within minutes, the platform begins steering them towards similar or trending topics, often without any awareness of choice. This kind of algorithmic influence can create narrow content loops or filter bubbles, where children are exposed to a limited range of ideas, aesthetics, and opinions. Over time, this may restrict their worldview and reduce their ability to think critically or encounter diverse perspectives. When everything they see is based on past behavior, it limits their chance to explore new interests, challenge existing beliefs, or engage with content that lies outside their comfort zone. The impact of these algorithms extends beyond just entertainment or learning. They play a critical role in shaping self-image and identity. Children are exposed to idealized versions of life, beauty, and success at incredibly young ages, often through influencers, animated characters, or digitally enhanced content. These portrayals are carefully selected by algorithms that prioritize engagement, not accuracy or well-being. As a result, many Gen Alpha kids begin to develop unrealistic expectations of themselves and others, leading to issues like low self-esteem, anxiety, or body image concerns. The feedback loop of likes, views, and shares becomes a form of validation, subtly teaching them to measure their worth through algorithm-approved popularity rather than genuine self-expression. Moreover, the gamification of digital platforms where content is rewarded with points, badges, or streaks can lead to addictive behaviors. These mechanisms, powered by algorithms, are designed to maximize time spent on apps, often at the expense of real-world experiences. For Generation Alpha, the line between entertainment and manipulation is increasingly blurred. They are not just passive consumers. They are active data sources being analyzed, targeted, and influenced without fully understanding the implications. This makes them uniquely vulnerable to digital influence at a developmental stage when they are still learning how to form opinions, regulate emotions, and make independent decisions. While these algorithms provide convenience and customized experiences, they also raise ethical questions about autonomy, exposure, and mental health. The power of technology in Gen Alpha's life is undeniable, but is accompanied by a subtle erosion of agency. Without conscious intervention from parents, educators, and platforms themselves, Generation Alpha risks becoming a generation guided more by machine logic than human intention. Generation Alpha is becoming one of the most influential consumer groups in history, despite being the youngest. Unlike previous generations, their exposure to brands and advertising starts at a remarkably early age, often before they can even read or write. Through tablets, smartphones, and smart TVs, they're interacting with products and services designed specifically to attract and retain their attention. What makes them particularly powerful is not just their exposure, but their active role in shaping household purchasing decisions. From food choices to tech gadgets, toys to vacation plans, parents often look to their children for input, and Generation Alpha knows how to communicate their preferences clearly and persuasively, usually through the very devices that have shaped their awareness from day one. This early brand awareness is not accidental. Companies are investing heavily in understanding the behaviors, desires, and digital habits of Gen Alpha. They are leveraging data analytics, influencer marketing, and gamified advertising to engage children in ways that feel less like traditional marketing and more like entertainment. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and even educational apps are filled with branded content, product placements, and subtle calls to action that bypass traditional ad filters. Children might watch a favorite content creator unbox a new toy, wear branded clothes, or use a particular gadget, and instantly want the same, often without recognizing it as advertising. This creates a generation that not only consumes but also desires to emulate, replicate, and participate in brand-driven culture from a very early age. In this landscape, Generation Alpha is not just passively watching ads. They're engaging with them, sharing them, and even creating their own. Many children now participate in trends, challenges, and user-generated content that essentially acts as unpaid advertising for brands. They learn early how to showcase products in a way that mimics influencers, developing an intuitive understanding of brand aesthetics, social validation, and online identity. Their preferences are forming in a media environment where consumption is tightly linked to self-expression and social belonging, which makes their influence on consumer culture not only stronger, but also more emotionally charged. At the same time, this level of early consumer engagement introduces serious concerns. Being exposed to marketing tactics before developing critical thinking skills makes Gen Alpha especially vulnerable to manipulation. They may struggle to distinguish between content and advertising, or between genuine recommendations and paid promotion. This blurring of boundaries makes them easy targets for commercial exploitation, embedding consumerism deeply into their identity from a young age. As they grow, their expectations of products, services, and experiences may be shaped more by trend cycles and peer influence than by personal needs or values. Moreover, the constant emphasis on acquiring, upgrading, and showcasing can foster materialistic attitudes, where happiness is equated with ownership and social status is tied to brands. This mindset can contribute to dissatisfaction, entitlement, and insecurity, particularly when children begin to compare themselves to peers with access to more or better things. While Generation Alpha holds remarkable power in the consumer space, that power comes with fragility, an emotional and psychological dependence on branded experiences that could shape their lifelong relationship with money, value, and identity. Despite growing up with incredible technological advantages and unprecedented access to information, Generation Alpha faces significant mental health challenges that are becoming more visible and concerning with each passing year. The constant connectivity that defines their lives brings not only opportunities, but also stressors that can deeply affect their emotional well-being. Anxiety, depression, attention disorders, and feelings of loneliness are increasingly reported among children in this generation, reflecting a complex interplay between digital immersion and developmental vulnerability. Mental health experts and educators are sounding alarms about how the pressures of living in a hyper-connected, performance-driven digital age are contributing to a fragile emotional landscape for many young people. One major factor contributing to this growing mental health crisis is the nature of social media and online interaction. Platforms that Generation Alpha uses daily are designed to maximize engagement through likes, shares, comments, and followers, creating a constant feedback loop where self-worth is often measured by virtual approval. This environment fosters comparison, competition, and the pursuit of perfection, which can erode self-esteem and create feelings of inadequacy. Young children are exposed to idealized images and lifestyles, many digitally enhanced or curated, which set unrealistic standards that are impossible to meet. For developing minds, this can lead to distorted self-image, body dissatisfaction, and chronic stress. Cyberbullying is another serious concern that disproportionately affects Generation Alpha. Unlike traditional bullying, which is limited by time and space, online harassment can be relentless, invasive, and anonymous. Children can be targeted 24/7 in spaces they once considered safe, like their own homes or bedrooms. The emotional toll of cyberbullying is profound, often leading to withdrawal, depression, and in extreme cases, self-harm or suicidal thoughts. Unfortunately, because much of this activity happens in digital shadows, it can be difficult for parents and educators to detect and intervene early. Attention disorders and cognitive overload are also prevalent issues linked to Gen Alpha's digital lifestyle. The rapid pace of information consumption, multitasking across devices, and the bombardment of notifications condition their brains to crave constant stimulation. This environment can impair their ability to focus deeply, process complex information, or engage in sustained mindful activities. The risk is not just shortened attention spans, but also difficulties with memory, learning, and emotional regulation. As screen time increases, so does the potential for sleep disruption, which further exacerbates mental health problems by impairing mood and cognitive function. Parents and educators face the difficult task of helping Generation Alpha build resilience and emotional intelligence amid these challenges. Traditional coping mechanisms may be less effective when much of a child's social and emotional life happens online. It requires intentional efforts to teach digital literacy, emotional awareness, and self-care strategies tailored to a tech-saturated world. Encouraging offline activities, fostering real-world social connections, and creating safe spaces for open dialogue about mental health are crucial. At the same time, there is a growing need for systemic changes, including better regulation of online platforms, increased access to mental health resources, and education reforms that prioritize emotional well-being alongside academic achievement. In sum, While Generation Alpha is equipped with incredible tools and opportunities, they are also navigating a uniquely challenging emotional landscape. Their mental health is a critical area that demands attention, understanding, and proactive support to ensure that their immense potential is not undermined by the fragility that accompanies growing up in an era of constant digital and social pressures. Generation Alpha stands at the crossroads of unparalleled opportunity and unprecedented vulnerability. As the first true digital natives, they possess extraordinary access to technology, information, and global connectivity that can empower them to innovate, learn, and lead like no generation before. Yet, this immense power comes with fragile foundations shaped by digital dependence, social complexities, mental health challenges, and a world marked by uncertainty and rapid change. The choices made by parents, educators, policymakers, and society at large will determine whether Generation Alpha can harness its potential to build a brighter future or succumb to the pressures that threaten its well-being. To safeguard this generation, we must urgently prioritize balanced development, fostering critical thinking, emotional resilience, genuine human connection, and ethical technology use. Only by acknowledging both their strengths and vulnerabilities can we truly prepare Generation Alpha to not only survive, but thrive in the complex world ahead.